Okay, it's 5 p.m. on January 21st, Thursday. This is Chair Greg Hooksma calling the Planning Commission to order. So first we'll do a roll call. Just say present when you hear your name. Shannon Greina.
Present.
Amanda Bennett.
Present.
Bob Soltis.
Present.
Tom Brown.
Present.
John Krasick.
Present.
And again, I'm Greg Hooksma. And Carl, do you and Michelle want to also stand up and be noted?
This is Carl DeSimas, Senior Planner with the City of Gig Harbor.
Michelle Thomas, Planning Technician with the City of Gig Harbor.
Okay, thank you. So we have all of the sitting commissioners in attendance. We have a quorum. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the December 17th, 2020 meeting. Does anyone have any comments about those meetings? Excuse me, those minutes? If not, I'm willing to entertain a motion to accept the minutes of that meeting.
So moved.
John Krasick, seconded by Amanda Bennett. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, Pierce County Comprehensive Plan amendments. And Carl DeSimas from the City of Gig Harbor staff is going to do the presentation for us. Carl, take it away.
All right, thank you, Chair. Greetings, Planning Commissioners. Hope everybody's doing well and looking forward to getting the big shot and moving past the pandemic. Okay, can everybody see my the slide in front of them?
Yeah.
Yes,
hey,
it's up.
we're getting some feedback from someone, so I think it'd be best if everybody mutes their microphone, please.
How's that? Is that better? Okay. Okay, so as I noted on the Planning Commission's executive summary, we'll be going over this evening the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan amendments for their 2021 docket. And really it's just those few amendments that are relative to Gig Harbor and really more in particular, the City of Gig Harbor's urban growth area. So, and that really only comprises of a few of those of the total amendments that the county is looking at, which is quite a few. So, sorry. And also, let me mention, as part of that, as part of those amendments, the Gig Harbor Peninsula Community Plan is also proposed to be amended. And we'll get into what the differences are between those documents or similarities as we go through. So the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan, it's just like our comprehensive plan. It's their overall strategy for growth and development for, the 20-year planning period. They accept applications to amend their comprehensive plan every 2 years, much like we do for private proposals. We will accept applications every year for a comprehensive plan amendment. But on private proposals, we will only make a decision on those proposals, or the council would only make a decision on those proposals in even years. Every year, the city can initiate comprehensive or amendments to its comprehensive plan in the city. The Pierce County Comprehensive Plan docket for this year includes a total of 25 proposed amendments. And so that's what I was saying. They've got a whole bunch of amendments that they're looking at, but really only about 4 or 5 of them pertain to things that the city might be interested in. And as part of that, we receive a letter, or at least we received a letter this year from the county. It went to the mayor, and it sort of outlined a few of those amendments that the city might be interested in commenting on. And so that's sort of what got city staff engaged in reviewing those and getting into the process. Just really quickly, since we're going to be getting into community plans, I thought I would get into that a little bit up front, just so there's less confusion. And I don't know if it makes sense, Chair, for people to ask questions as we go along, maybe, so it's a little more conversational, or if we want to wait till the end for questions, but I'm fine either way.
I think I would prefer if people ask questions as we go along because we're covering so much ground.
I think that's a good idea. Michelle, do we have a way for folks to kind of raise a hand, or so the chair can recognize them?
There is a hand, or they can just unmute themselves. It depends on how the chair prefers.
Why don't we, does everyone see where you can raise your hand on your screen?
No, where is that?
On my screen, it's in the upper right-hand corner. There's a list of icon choices, and then there's one that says more. If you tap more, then there's a raise hand thing that comes up. So
That may be at the bottom of their screen. See, yep.
I see a Q&A box.
Yeah.
Is that it?
well, I'll tell you what, let's just unmute yourself and speak up. It'll be easier that way.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. So I thought I would cover a little bit of ground on the community plan, just so everybody has some idea of what and where those are. I pulled this graphic directly from the Pierce County site that discusses community plans. And so you'll note that throughout the county, we have 11 community plans, one of which is the Gig Harbor Peninsula community plan. And you can see the area that it covers there in yellow. And then there's several others. Some of them you would expect, maybe you wouldn't expect one at Browns or Dash Point. But Key Peninsula has its own community plan, completely separate of ours. And then you can also see, if you look in that graphic, that the city is, grayed out. So technically not part of the community plan, but our urban growth area certainly is. So community plans are a part of the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan. So the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan has an element called community plans. And then these community plans are sort of live alone, separate documents, but they are part of the comprehensive plan. So in order to be amended, they have to go through a comprehensive plan process. These the plans are intended to be a supplement and a refinement of the comprehensive plan policies. They represent unique characteristics of each community planning area. So they allow for these areas around, in really rural areas, but also those urban growth areas around cities, to sort of find their own unique flavors and plan for the future around those.
Carl, just before you go on, what
Sure.
are the large area? Well, there's several large areas on that just across the bridge, for example, that aren't labeled at all as being. Do they not have community plans, or they're not involved, or?
Well, that's Tacoma. That particular area, I think, that you're talking about. So this, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about this area in here?
Yeah, and south of that, and then south again, and
Yeah. And so, those areas are all municipalities. And so they have their own costs. And so they wouldn't necessarily have a community plan associated with them. Now, if there could be urban growth areas associated somewhere in there, but I don't know. I think those urban growth areas for Tacoma, I'd have to look at another map to kind of figure it out, but we're looking
Yeah.
at, Stillicum and University Place. Yeah, I think that these are all municipalities, and that's why they don't have community plans.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So our community plan was adopted back in 2002, and it's had, a series of amendments along the way, I think, but not anything too substantive. And so it's kind of remained the same for the most part. What does get updated for sure is if you scroll through the existing plan, you'll note that a lot of the maps and figures and things like that have been updated over the years. But it doesn't get updated real often. And as part of this, I should note then that the Gig Harbor Peninsula, Peninsula Advisory Commission, which I will talk about a little bit more later, it has an interest right now in really delving into this community plan and completely overhauling it. I sat in on one of their meetings recently, and they were very vocal about the fact that they didn't feel like they were being heard by county government, and that they didn't feel like they really had control over that document. And so there's definitely some movement, and that was also mentioned last night at the Pierce County Planning Commission meeting. So there's definitely some sentiment out there that they would like to really overhaul this thing. So this update now, while it does make a lot of changes throughout, there's sort of more updates. It peppered a couple of things in here and there, but it's not really sort of a complete overhaul of the document. So again, it's part of the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan. It provides a framework for consistent land use standards in the urban growth area for both Pierce County and the city of Gig Harbor. And what it doesn't say there, obviously, is that it also can, provides the future land uses and the future plan for the rural areas, including Fox Island, as you can see on this graphic here, which zooms in much further to the peninsula in our area here. And this plan has to be consistent with the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan, of course, and then therefore with the Growth Management Act. So the proposed amendments that we're looking at, and I apologize, on the executive summary that I sent over, one of those was, I think I had put 939-163. That was supposed to be 940-163. I hope people caught that. I just caught it today when I was preparing this PowerPoint, so I hope that wasn't confusing for anyone. But these are the 4 applications that are most germane to the city of Gig Harbor and our urban growth areas and those rural areas closest to us. And so those are the ones that we have keyed in on to sort of track through the process and potentially provide some feedback to the Pierce County Planning Commission and ultimately to the Pierce County Council. So application number 939790, this is one of their area-wide map amendments. And this one was to redesignate 5 parcels from their Rural 5, Rural 10 land use designations to a park and recreation land use designation. All of these 5 parcels that they're focused on here are outside of the city's UGA. So they're not necessarily, our purview here, but they are close enough. At least 2 of the sites are close enough that we are, we have interest. And those are the 3 areas are the Performance Golf Center site, which I think most people are familiar with, closer to the bridge. The Rotary Dog Park site that's over by the women's prison, and now Latitude 47, if you're familiar with that project. And the 3rd site is over by the Rosedale Playfield, so near the Templeton's Grocery, far out, about as far out on Rosedale as you can get before you hit the water. and this is the first one here. So this is the Performance Golf Center. There are 3 parcels involved here that they want to redesignate from that rural 10 in this case to Parks and Recreation. Now, these parcels, all of these parcels that we're looking at, these 5 parcels, these 3 included, are all owned at this time by PennMet Parks. And so what Pierce County staff has relayed to me is that the reasoning behind this, for the most part, for these changes is that they would like to have all of their properties in a Parks and Recreation land use designation and zoning classification. So that's as far as we know, that is the impetus for the proposed changes here. And as we know, this site is potentially the future home of an indoor athletic center or activity center of some kind that, as far as I know, is under review or under design at this point. This is the Rotary Dog Park over by the women's prison, right on the corner where Busich curls around and heads north to Zamel. So really large site. At one point, there was some discussion about this site being a school site when they were looking at citing new elementary schools, but that didn't come to fruition. We have not heard anything about any kind of development on this site, or any plans that PennMet Park has for it. It's highly constrained by critical areas, streams, wetlands running through it. So I don't know that there's a lot of room for any future development, but I don't know that for sure.
Carl, a comment and a question. I'm actually quite familiar with this one, having walked in it quite a bit. And it really is a wonderful site. It's much more than just a dog park because there's trails all throughout the area. But I did notice one time as I was walking through there, and I think it was behind either the fire district office or the fire station, but there's a large area there that looks either like a auto wrecking yard, a car dealership, or an impound for cars. Do you know what that is?
No, I'm not familiar with that. Is that to the, are you saying that's to the
It's to the
west?
north.
Oh, to the north of that site.
Yeah.
No, I am not aware. I'm not aware of that. I don't know.
Okay.
I could look into it for you though.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that because there were at that time at least an awful lot of cars there, and my first hunch was, well, is that the county, the yard that the county uses for impounded vehicles? So.
Yeah, I will look into that for you.
Okay, thanks, Carl.
Okay, moving on. And of course, this one's actually the closest to our UGA. This is right on the edge of our urban growth area. The urban growth area actually is right across the street, and the women's prison is actually within our urban growth area. And then this one is the one that's far out on Rosedale. So Rosedale comes in, and this is the little gas station here with the ball field across the street here. And from we don't really know for sure what the future use of this parcel might be, but there is a lot of speculation that it could become a parking area for the playfield, because apparently when they have little league games and things out there, it gets pretty full in the neighborhood and in the streets and things. And so I think there's a need for it. So that's potential. But again, there is no development proposals with any of these amendments that we're reviewing here. These are all simply changing the land use classification from that rural 10 to parks and recreation use. So just really quickly, to give a little background on that. So rural 5 and their rural 10, and actually they've changed the rural 5 to reserve 5. And that's another amendment that they're making. They're going to go through the plan, the comp plan, and change all of those, all of the places where they have rural 5 to a reserve 5, just for just clarifying that. And so the rural 5 and rural 10 are residential land use and zoning designations. They're really meant for low density residential, but they do allow parks, and really they allow local parks, so smaller kind of neighborhood type parks more so, and they will allow county and conservancy and regional parks under a conditional use permit. The Parks and Recreation land use designation allows for local county conservancy parks outright, so it allows for far more flexibility from that use perspective. But for regional parks, it still requires that conditional use permit, so more public process involved in a conditional use permit than something that's just permitted outright. Yeah, any further questions about that one before I move on to the next application? Okay, so application number 940-337. This is another area-wide map amendment. This map amendment is to redesignate 2 parcels that are in the Gig Harbor Peninsula Community Plan area. And this is in Purdy, actually, up in the Purdy area, from employment center to a mixed-use district. And so these parcels actually are within our UGA. If you can see my cursor, our UGA, this is kind of the northern extent of the city's urban growth area up here along 144th up north. And then this is 302 running up this way. So the 2 parcels that are the subject of this proposed area-wide map amendment are these 2 here. As we understand, there's a proposal that has been provided to Pierce County, and the owners of these parcels want to use them as a contractor's yard, and that is the reason for the request to redesignate and rezone these from commercial center, employment center to a mixed use district. So from the city's perspective, and this is in our UGA, so from a city's perspective, the future land use in the City of Gig Harbor's comp plan is commercial business. So if we were to annex this area tomorrow, the initial land use designation for the area would be commercial business. The implementing zones for the commercial business land use designation in the city of Gig Harbor are C1, which is general commercial, B1, which is a neighborhood commercial, and B2, which is general business. From the city of Gig Harbor's zoning code perspective, a contractor's yard is only allowed in one of those 3 zones. They would be an industrial level 2 use. So back to the Pierce County comp plan, an employment center provides for adequate industrial manufacturing office jobs, and the mixed use it permits concentrations of commercial office and multifamily development. So so a little bit different, obviously allows for some residential, whereas the employment center is not really suited to that. This amendment has not been very well supported. It's not supported by city staff, and it hasn't been supported by the county staff. So far, it was not supported by the Peninsula Advisory Commission, and there are several reasons stated by the Pierce County staff as to why that is. From our perspective, it doesn't seem to make sense to have a contractor's yard there where our future zoning would only allow it in one of the 3 implementing zones. And so we're not supportive of this application. So we'll see if how far this application goes. Pierce County Planning Commission has not held a hearing on it yet.
Carl, for what it's worth, I have to totally agree with you on that. being a little bit familiar with that area, it just does not seem like a very good use for that particular parcel.
Yeah, that was our feeling too. And Pierce County, I can't go into the specifics too much just because I don't understand it well enough to say, but the MUD district from Pierce County's perspective, there are percentages of land that are to be designated or developed as mixed use prior to expanding that designation. And so they feel that expanding the designation without first developing those other areas that are already designated MUD is not consistent with their comp plan. So I have a feeling that this one may not go too far, but anyway, there it is. Application number 940172. This one is this one's a little bit newer than the others. It was proposed not more recently. This is a comprehensive plan text amendment, so not a map amendment. And this would amend the density calculation that the county uses in urban areas, urban residential areas, from the net formula to a simple gross formula. This policy, let's see, let me just read my notes really quick. So it would change how the county calculates density for allowable number of dwelling units per acre within the urban zone classifications from net developable acreage to gross site acreage. The proposal would remove the following deductions in the calculation of allowed units. So these would be removed: environmentally constrained lands, private road or vehicle access easements, shared access facilities serving 2 or more lots, and public road right-of-way in certain circumstances. Very similar to the way the city of Gig Harbor calculates density currently. So we currently calculate density using a net formula as well. So this is a really big change that they're proposing here. And it's obviously, and it's being highly scrutinized as well. The Pierce County staff, this is the actual language. So this is what would be added to the comp plan goal LU 26. So they would just be changing out gross for net, and they're removing LU 26.1, which in determining net developable acreage, deduction shall be made for roads and environmentally constrained lands. So in essence, then what they're doing is saying that if you have an acre of land and you're able to subdivide it into, it's in an R4 designation, you're able to get 4 lots out of it, you could just get 4 lots out of it because you'd just be calculating based on the gross lot acreage. But in some cases where you have a critical area, say a wetland, you have to remove that acreage. So if you had a full acre and half of it was constrained by a wetland, you're losing half of your density essentially at the same time. So it's a pretty major change. Pierce County staff has not provided a recommendation yet because they have determined that more in-depth environmental review is necessary. And in fact, they issued a determination of significance, which is rare, under SEPA. And so as a result of that, an environmental impact statement scoping notice has been issued. That was issued on December 29th, 2020. It was issued to staff when we have it under review currently, and we will be providing comments. There has been some discussion, however, we've just recently heard that the Pierce County Council may kill this application or withdraw that application because of those environmental issues raised, because the DS was issued. And again, yeah, so we have it currently under review now. So we'll be providing comments. I think we have until the end of next week to get those comments out on this one.
Carl, question for you.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I understand this. It sounds like, if I get it right here, that if you change this approach, that 1 acre area you had for that, you were going to put some property or some development on, you would still be able to put those 4 houses on there, even if it had environmentally sensitive lands on it. You'd have to kind of shove that into half of the acreage.
Yeah, correct. It's a way of creating more density, really. So it would be akin to an increase in density. And so, from a Growth Management Act perspective, within a city or maybe within an urban growth area, that might be consistent and could be, might be supported in some ways. However, you're also then, it could be argued the other way, that you're also putting more density in around critical areas and thereby impacting those critical areas more as a result of it.
What's the source of this amendment proposal? Who put it into the system?
That's a good question. I believe, I do know who it is. It's the Master Builders Association.
Oh, okay. That explains a little bit.
I'm sorry?
Carl, a follow-up question. In the application that the master builders submit, do they provide, or is it customary for the applicant to provide a justification for the proposed amendment?
Yes, there is. And actually, in the determination of significance, I have it here in front of me. I'll read the proposed objectives for the proposal, if I could. Number 1, increase housing production and housing affordability. Number 2, increase efficient use of land in urban growth areas to reduce sprawl. 3, more effectively achieve allowed maximum densities. 4, allow for more flexibility in neighborhood layout and design. 5, maximize use of existing utility infrastructure. 6, reduce lot development costs. 7, provide more regulatory predictability in development process. And finally, simplify interpretation and application of regulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And
Carol, I can,
sorry, John.
okay, I can see why, this might maybe make sense in an urban growth area, but to me, this makes absolutely no sense outside of urban growth areas.
And I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier, but the proposed policies and regulations would apply within the urban growth area in unincorporated Pierce County. So so these would only apply to the urban growth area.
Okay.
And so I think you're absolutely right.
Let me just clarify again, because I think you said that, and I can't recall whether you said this would either make it consistent with Gig Harbor's policies or it would not be consistent with Gig Harbor's policies.
It would be inconsistent with the way that the city of Gig Harbor currently formulates density. So
okay.
we are consistent right now. The way the Pierce County comp plan reads, that they calculate using a net developable acreage. That is exactly how the city of Gig Harbor also does it. They're proposing a change to make that a gross calculation rather than a net in the UGA.
Yeah, right. Got that. So I think from the city standpoint, we probably would not be in favor of this proposal because I think we've talked about this before. We want the county growth to be consistent with the way that we are doing it.
Yeah, I believe that's likely true. We haven't, Katrina and I are meeting on this shortly to formulate our thoughts. And so we welcome any additional feedback. I've taken some notes there on your feedback, Commissioner. And so, but yeah, I think you're spot on. And this also plays into something that I'll bring up a little bit later in the next amendment, that's kind of intriguing and sort of alarming as well.
Thanks,
Well,
Carl.
doesn't it kind of go one step even further, Carl, that in the very near past, like in the past couple of years, the city of Gig Harbor has proactively moved to limit density? I mean, they've made changes.
Correct.
So this would kind of fly in the face of that, it seems to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think in the, the direction that the city has wanted to go recently since our boom years there, where we did a lot of subdivisions. The city grew exponentially, and we brought in a lot of households, a lot of folks, with the Harbor Hill and Gig Harbor North developments and the west side of 16. There's been, a change in council direction for sure, and to sort of scale that back. And we have made a lot of changes to the code in response to those desires. And yeah, I agree. This does fly in the face of that. Okay, so moving on, application number 940163. This is a large amendment. So this is the one where they've gone through that 174-page document that is the Gig Harbor Peninsula Community Plan, and they're making a lot of proposed amendments to, in a lot of ways, it's cleanup. Updating figures, updating graphics, updating maps, things that just kind of need to be done. Maybe in updating a few of the urban growth area descriptors to sort of get them back up to date. Where things have changed in the last 10-15 years. And at the same, and they're also proposing, there are a few goals that they added that staff keyed in on a little bit, where there are some changes. One of those in particular is up in Purdy, where there is some desire from the Pierce County Council to start thinking about the revitalization of the Purdy commercial area. And so again, remember, these are goals and action items that are within a comprehensive plan. So these aren't regulatory changes that we're talking about. They're policy changes. So but anyway, two of these that they've proposed, one, addressing current challenges to development and redevelopment in the Purdy area, including but not limited to utility infrastructure, parking, urban design, natural resources. And then addressing what the community envisions, including but not limited to waterfront access, streetscapes, pedestrian infrastructure, other public services and amenities. As part of this, then, when they brought this to the Gig Harbor, the Peninsula Advisory Commission, they were supportive of this idea, but they felt that there should be an action item associated with it, and that is where this ID 2.7 came out of. So the way that the plan is constructed, you have all of these background information, and then you have a lot of goals, and then you have at the end sort of spreadsheets of action items that they would like to implement. And this is one of those implementing action items. Engage with the public in preparing a plan for revitalizing the Purdy Commercial Center, which includes community recommendations, an implementation strategy for addressing utility infrastructure, streetscapes, pedestrian infrastructure, parking, economic development, urban design, parks and recreation, waterfront access, natural resources, and other public service amenities. So this is it's an interesting idea, and something that as staff we commented on, and we are at this point, staff is supportive of those goals. But we did note to the Planning Commission, the Pierce County Planning Commission, that the city is looking at conducting a full analysis of our urban growth area likely this year. And that the county might want to consider some language regarding coordination of these efforts with the city if they do indeed move forward with public outreach. And I'll also note in the action plan where this ID 2.7 lives, they do note the city of Gig Harbor as a stakeholder in that action. So they've got a list of stakeholders there, and the city of Gig Harbor is included. So that also gives us a little bit better feeling that, you know, if this were to go forward, we would be at the table in some manner and be heard.
Carl,
Yes.
it's Bob Soltis. Please describe for me the Purdy area. I mean, I know Purdy in general, but what's the northernmost perimeter and the southernmost perimeter when you say Purdy?
Let me bring up a map here really quick.
Because I think of local boys and a small little shopping area and a coffee shop and the
Yeah.
Hispanic food truck.
Yeah.
It's got to be more than that.
Which is really good, by the way, that food truck there. Let's see. Let me go back to this now. Share. Can you all see that map there?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the purple area that I've got designated here. That's actually our urban growth area. And so down here where this red is, that's our that's the actual city boundary. This is Cannerwood over here. And so the Purdy area runs up to 144th, which is our the northern extent of our urban growth area. And then I would say some might argue that it picks up some of this over here, but I would really say that's more Cannerwood. So it's pretty much, I would say, everything west of 16 and, you know, to the water up to 144th and then down to, you know, Good Enough.
Okay.
Drive, and maybe even picks up some of this down here that's actually within the city. So,
Carol, one thing that occurs to me in that statement that they added, you could put that back on the screen.
oh, you bet. Give me one sec here. I'll just stop
Sure.
sharing here. Where's it at? There.
Yeah, okay, and that 2.7, I know they've got the word streetscapes in there, but it seems that there's a much bigger transportation issue in Purdy. And that's, of course, the bridge and then the traffic that's coming off the freeway. So I think there probably should be a word or two in 2.7 to talk about addressing the greater transportation problem in Purdy.
I think that's a really good comment. There was mention of that last night at the Pierce County Planning Commission. Somebody asked about the bridge and whose responsibility it is for maintenance and or rebuilding that bridge. And, you know, they posed that to Pierce County staff. And I believe that's under WashDOT, but so there wasn't really much of an answer given, but I think that that's a really good point. You know, they did do some work on that intersection up there, which has definitely made things a bit better, but overall, it definitely got a really large traffic problem in that area.
Yeah, I really support the concept of what they're trying to do here, but I don't think they should move ahead without the bigger issue.
Okay. Okay, and then here's a couple more of the goals that were added in. This was something else that came up when they were going through this with when the council was Pierce County Council was putting this together, and when they were, I believe when they were talking with the Peninsula Advisory Commission, but there's some general want and desire to protect more of the significant trees, and overall tree canopy in the especially at least in the urban growth areas, and maybe into the rural areas as well, but in particular in those areas that are going to be, you know, more urban in nature. And staff was, you know, we're again supportive of this idea. They did use, and I didn't put it in here, but in one of the items, I think it's in the action item that's associated with this. I guess I forgot to put it on. I'm sorry, but they use the word stable for vegetation to be retained, and we felt that was a little, I don't know, is it just a little too obtuse, I guess is the best way to put it, and it leaves too much up to interpretation. And so we recommended that they maybe change that word from stable to healthy. It might be a little bit nitpicky, but it just seems like healthy has, you know, clearer connotation than stable. So we brought that up to their staff and their planning commission as well. Any thoughts on that?
So does this refer to the whole area? We're not just talking about Purdy, right? This is a separate thing.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
This would be relative to the Gig Harbor Peninsula community plan area.
Thank you.
Carl, this is good. I like this. It's consistent with where the city is going.
I was just going to ask that question, John. I wasn't sure where the city was in terms of this wording. Is this pretty much right out of the city's playbook?
In some ways, I mean, again, this is policy language, and most of what we have relative to vegetation is going to be in our zoning code. Now, there's some desire by the city council currently, actually, to look at tree preservation. And there have been some cities, Bonnie Lake is the one that comes to mind. Most recently, they came up with they developed an urban forestry plan. So that is sort of all encompassing. A lot of times you'll see jurisdictions come up with urban forestry plans and they're only relative to public trees. So in public parks or in right of ways. But what Bonnie Lake put together is far more, it reaches private development as well as the public areas, and really gets into that idea of, you know, a tree city and measuring tree canopy and maybe even getting into maintaining percentages of tree canopy and things like that. I haven't read the plan cover to cover yet, so I've just spoke with the planner who was working on it. But that's on my to-do list. And like I said, council is really interested in getting taking a really good look at our landscape code and maybe making some overhauls. And also that also gets into our design manual as well. So that would be something that would definitely be coming to the planning commission if that moves forward.
Second
Carl-
question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, where does the language regarding the health or the stable trees come in here in particular? Where would we find that? Because while I definitely love the idea of the tree community and the canopy, I think it's super important that the trees that are preserved are worthy of preservation and able to be preserved, because as we all know that just leaving up mature trees isn't necessarily going to ensure their growth over time or their stability once you've cut down all the trees around them.
That is actually, very correct. And that's that's where we got kind of concerned about the use of the word stable, because what does that really imply? Whereas healthy, at least healthy implies more. But even that could be left up to interpretation, so, but again, this is policy language. Let's see. So pages 59 and 60 of that 174 page document. I might be able to pull it up here for you all. And it shows up in a couple of places. We just thought it was interesting. Sometimes something that you just completely overlook when you're reviewing plans like this, but as planners, you know, that's why people get annoyed with planners.
Well, Carl, while you're looking for that, in the time that I've been on the planning commission, you know, the whole tree discussion has come up over and over again. And there used to be language about buffers, you know, 15-foot buffer, a 30-foot buffer. And I think that you don't have to look any further than Harbor Hill to understand that, you know, when you cut that what sounds like a lot, because when you look at a big wooded lot, you say, oh, well, they're going to leave 30 feet of those trees. And when you remove all the trees in the middle and you look at it, it doesn't look good at all. It's completely inadequate. And then, you know, they come in and they bulldoze you to just clear cut everything in the center. And that just looks ridiculous. And the only reason they're doing it is because it's cheaper and more convenient for them to build that way, because they don't have to work around the trees in the middle. And that's just the reality of it. And then, you know, the tragedy we had in Gig Harbor where they destabilized a tree because they damaged the root system, and then the windstorm came and then it killed somebody. And then the knee-jerk reaction was, okay, now we got to cut down all the trees. And so you get into these situations, and I hope that, you know, when we're involved, we can look at other communities that have done it better, you know, leaving islands of trees within communities. You know, I don't know what the right answers might be, but what we have done historically is not the right answer.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and you're right. Finding the right answer is the key, and I think there's been a lot of searching done, you know, and a lot of experimentation done on that. And you know, it's tough. I mean, trees and development just don't get along all that well. You know, like you said, leaving those trees around the perimeter sometimes might seem like a good idea, but what we do find is that those trees were relying on the inner trees to protect them. You know, those forests kind of all work together, and so that's where things get a little dicey. And so and what's the answer to that? Even with tree islands, you end up with that same issue. So yeah, I don't know what the right answer is, but we're going to explore it, it sounds like, so that'll be fun.
Carl,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, it's Shannon.
Oh, Shannon, sorry.
That's okay. You know, the part that I have a problem with here is the goal GHD7 requires sites that are devoid or deficient to introduce supplemental landscaping. I mean, it's great in theory, but lots of times, you know, when trees have gone down and everything, there are roots, and it's almost impossible to plant there. So I think that, and it's not a good thing. It's a really slippery slope requiring things like that. I mean, maybe a site allows, or in adjacent sites to make it up, or it's a problem that a lot of my clients have run into. So I just wanted to make that comment.
I am noting that comment. That's a great comment, Commissioner Grena. Thank you.
Sure.
Carl, I want to second what Greg said, and also your comments too on the difficulties of implementing this. But I've also noticed that in some areas that tree buffer is about one tree wide, that there are plenty of places where, you know, it looks kind of ridiculous because you just have a few single trees in a line, and that's not what I would consider to be a barrier, a buffer area.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of gets back to the intent of what that buffer is meant for. Is the buffer meant for, you know, to be a screen, or is it meant to really be look like a natural area? You know, we have this sort of push and pull between what we would consider a landscape perimeter or perimeter landscape area and a perimeter buffer area. So are you trying to limit the nuisance between land uses, or are you trying to make the place look nice?
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
Commissioner Bennett, so this is one of the areas here. If you can all see my screen, I hope you can, where we get into where they've added this word stable. And presumably, yeah, so what they did, they added this word in, so it used to just read retain existing vegetation. So now they're saying retain stable vegetation. We felt that if they're not going to define stable, and maybe, and maybe even that comment, our comment should be that, you need to define healthy or anything, what is it? What is that actually, vegetation that you're retaining? And I think they say it again down here, retaining areas of stable, mature. So they used to say retaining areas of mature native vegetation. Now they say stable, mature. So we have similar language in our code where we allow, we allow for the removal of dead, diseased, and dying trees. So that's how we sort of look at them. So we're not saying you have to retain all of the native significant vegetation within certain areas. In some areas, you may have to retain all of the native vegetation unless they're dead, diseased, or dying, which then they're not necessarily considered a significant tree. So you wouldn't keep those. So it's in some ways similar, and we rely upon an expert to prepare a report and provide that to staff to tell us that that tree is dead, diseased, or dying and needs to be removed.
I also keep seeing the language that talks about significant trees. What does that refer to? Do we have a list somewhere, or someone talk about what makes a tree significant?
Well, in our code, we do have, so it has to be, oh boy, I have to look at our code now. 6 inches or more in diameter at breast height, so 54 inches up, and the tree has to be at least, I believe it's 6 inches. I'd have to look at the code just to be sure. It differs between conifers and deciduous trees too. So, but yeah, we do have a definition of what a significant tree is, at least in our code. Now, I don't, again, this is policy language, so they're not necessarily defining things so much. These are ideas that they would like to put into action at some point.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so that's the, and I did want to just go through, so there were a couple of things here that I didn't put in the slides. Oh, let me stop sharing this, sorry. There were just a couple more items that we commented on in this plan as well. We had a bunch of comments within the urban growth area descriptions. We made some comments about the city of Gig Harbor, Canterwood, Sweet Hill. Let's see. So for instance, in Canterwood, they were sort of lumping Canterwood and the village at Harbor Hill together in there. And so we made the comment that it's really Harbor Hill, and actually it has nothing to do with Canterwood. So we wanted to make sure that that was separated. They were including Zamel Homestead Park in the city's UGA. It's obviously not true. There were some questions we had about the Donkey Creek corridor, which is interesting because Donkey Creek really is mostly within the city. There's about 6 parcels that are in the UGA, and those are right along Burnham at where the Conan Fuel is. That's actually not in the city, that's actually in the county. So there's only about 6 parcels that exist in that Donkey Creek, what they're calling the Donkey Creek UGA. And then we had a couple questions, comments on the Reed Drive neighborhood. We felt like they might be trying to lump the Performance Golf Center into that UGA, and that's not that's not factual. So we made some comments about that. We had a couple of issues with a couple of sentences that were put out, particularly one that stated economic development in the Gig Harbor Peninsula is not a priority for the community, and as a result is a minor component of the community plan. We felt like a lot of the focus in these amendments for this comp plan, for the community plan, and the proposals that they've made here for amending are relative to economic development, particularly in the Purdy area. So we felt like that was just erroneous.
Hey, Carl.
Sure.
On Donkey Creek also, unless my compass is really broken, there was a comment that it said that Donkey Creek emptied into the northwest corner of the harbor. I'm pretty sure Donkey Creek empties into the southwest corner of the harbor. Up at the head of the harbor.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess it depends on how you're looking at the map. I would say, yeah, I guess you could look at that either way. Gig Harbor is kind of pitched a little bit, you know, the harbor is a little pitched. So I guess you could look at that either way. I will look at that, Chair. And yeah, we had also made a note. They were talking about, they had old language in there. You know, the plan, some of the changes that they made, they recognized that East Bay was taken out of our urban growth area. But they still talked about East Bay sort of bordering on the city. And so we wanted to make sure that that was understood, that we're really just west and that north area of the harbor. Donkey Creek. Yeah, I'll look at that one. Okay. Let's see, where's another one here? So the healthy, stable thing, I brought that up already. Supportive. This was an interesting one. And actually, bear with me. I think I'll show you this if I can find it here. Give me one sec. There's a couple of real interesting points in here, and I think just bringing you all into the fold would be good. There's a couple of these things we may be talking about in the future, I think. Okay, yeah, right here. So let me stop that. So I appreciate all your patience as I'm jumping back and forth here. Okay.
Carl, could you get a little closer to your microphone? Your audio is kind of fading out.
Oh, is it? Is this better if,
yes.
if I do that? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so this is the economic element of the plan here, and they made a statement here that they're adding in. You can see my cursor. So it says the Gig Harbor Peninsula historically developed on commercial fishing, sport fishing, agriculture, and forestry. True. Today, the peninsula has diversified away from these sectors since completion of the second span of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And they go on to say, you know, professional services, healthcare, education. While that's, we think that that's partially true, you know, that the second span of Tacoma Narrows Bridge has definitely changed how people and where people work and maybe what they do. We think it's a broad statement to say that that is the reason for it. And, you know, we know living here that, you know, some of these commercial fishing and agriculture, some of it still exists, but of course some of it has faded away. But that's, you know, they stated it before. Today, the peninsula continues to have a relatively high concentration of employment in these sectors compared to the rest of Pierce County, which that still might be true. I think it just, we feel like that needs to be restated in a different way. And then further,
Carl, I would totally agree with that, and I think, you know, this may just be a policy document, but there's a whole lot of people that would take some serious offense to saying that we don't, in so many words, we don't care about our fishing industry anymore. And we've diversified away from that. That just really, that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's exactly how we felt about it, Chair. So we made that comment. Down on page 118, there's another funny statement I think that you all will agree is interesting. Wow. Come on. There we go. This statement right here. So they put in a bunch here. So this is urban facilities and services. And they state a lot of this is about level of service, and excuse me, most of it makes perfect sense. Citizens are faced with an uncertain development pattern. Developers are challenged with a burdensome administrative process, and the affected government officials have difficulty administering the regulations. I can see the look on a few people's faces. So that's exactly the same look that we had when we read that. And so
I'm going to unmute so you can hear me chuckling.
So we made a comment on that. We said that should just be omitted. We believe it's obviously an opinion-based statement and has no place in a plan like this. And in fact, yeah. So and in fact, we're going to do a little more research on maybe where the comment came from. And then finally, let me go back up. So this gets kind of back to what we were talking about with, you know, the density calculation and the change that they're proposing there. But so this is our urban area. Okay, so this is the rural area. So populations, household, and housing. This is all statistics. This has all been updated with new numbers and things, and they cite all those numbers, and that's, you know, it's all well and fine. But we noted when reading through this that, you know, they state that the population of Gig Harbor rural area has grown by 30%, with a total increase of 7,716 persons. So this is just the rural area. So this is areas outside the city and outside of our urban growth area. And then they go on to state what the, you know, how many households that amounts to and what the 2020 population estimate would be for that area. So looking back, you know, immediately we were a little bit stunned by this idea that the rural area has grown by 30% and that it's grown by 7,716 folks. That's it's quite a large number. And looking at the population targets that are contained in an appendix to the countywide planning policies, the entire rural area for Pierce County was supposed to grow by 3,600 persons. And just in our little community plan area alone, we're talking about, you know, 7,700 people. So, you know, what this points to really is, you know, there's been a lot of talk around town, and, you know, about the changes in Gig Harbor and our the limits of infrastructure and the strains on infrastructure and traffic and things, and so we have so much control over these boundaries, you know, that our code and plan is relative to, but this is outside of that. And so anyway, you know, we made the comment to the Planning Commission that this is alarming, and it's something that the county might want to review as far as this trend goes moving forward, you know, and maintaining their character, the rural character in those areas, as well as staying consistent with the goals and requirements of the Growth Management Act, because this really kind of seemingly flies in the face of everything that the Growth Management Act is trying to do, and just having urban growth areas and city boundaries, comprehensive plans. And so we definitely have some concern about these statistics. So it was very eye-opening for us.
Well, Carl, this would say that the growth management plan is not being effective. It's just business as usual.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that there are those folks out there who would agree that the Growth Management Act does not go far enough.
So Carl, how do you know that the Gig Harbor rural area does not include the growth area?
Let me scroll up. I believe that the urban area statistics include, let me see here. Urban, yeah, so this is the population of the Gig Harbor urban unincorporated area, which would be the urban growth area. So they're saying that has grown by 30% as well. Total increase of 1,634 persons. So that's all of that area, the urban growth areas around the city of Gig Harbor, those potential annexation areas. That's what actually the county refers to them as, PAAs. So those are areas that the city could potentially annex, and those are the areas that we will be doing an analysis on. So it does not include those folks in those rural statistics.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. And I'm almost done. Okay. Let's move it along. So I just wanted to give a little background on the Gig Harbor Peninsula Advisory Commission. And so this commission has heard, they're a commission of volunteers who live out here in the community plan area. They've heard 3 of the 4 proposed amendments already. They didn't hear the one on density, obviously, yet, because that's kind of new. And I'm not even sure that it goes to them. It might just go straight to the planning commission. But I just threw in some facts here about what the PAC is. You know, they serve as an advisory capacity on land use matters. So pretty much everything, any major land use matters that require some kind of public hearing in this plan area would go through the Planning Advisory Commission, and then they, much like you, would vote on if they needed to take action, they would vote and provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission would hold their hearing. They would make a recommendation, and then both of those recommendations would go up to the Pierce County Council for them to take action on whatever the proposal might be.
Carl, this may be kind of a crazy idea, but has anybody ever thought about having a person who would serve as a non-voting member of both the PAC and the Gig Harbor Planning Commission to provide some sort of liaison and coordination?
I've never heard anybody bring it up, but it certainly is an interesting idea.
And to follow that on, Carl, I brought this up a few meetings ago or whatever, who knows, lost track of time. But when I asked the question, what is our uplink, as far as information flow, and, how do we find out, about what's going on from above? And I mean, now you're doing this presentation, so we find out, but I'm also learning that now there's this Gig Harbor Peninsula Advisory Commission that's making some really important decisions and recommendations, and they are bypassing us completely. I mean, there's a communication link that has been going on and apparently will continue to go on that we have no knowledge of, and yet it impacts very directly what happens in the city and the work that we do for the city.
Yeah, that, and I guess the answer to that question probably is that staff, and this is what Katrina and I are committed to, is trying to bring more things like this to the Planning Commission, and trying to keep you alerted to these processes that are happening out there. And maybe that hasn't happened in the past, I don't know for sure, but that's what we would like to do. And so we recognize, we certainly recognize that, and want to do more of these just kind of informational sessions and discussions, educating both ways. And if it's interesting to the Planning Commission, I could certainly share information on how to follow the PAC and when their meetings are and things like that. I mean, they have a schedule, they have a website, so it's fairly well organized in that regard. So there would be a way to do that, maybe it comes down to some kind of well, I don't know. I don't want to get too far out over my skis. So
Yeah.
I will certainly bring that. I'll definitely bring that that sentiment back to Katrina and discuss with her.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to cast stones or aspersions here. I just think it's one of those things as we move forward, are there ways to improve that? Because this is just kind of a big deal to me. I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel.
Okay.
The PAC's purview is the whole area that's outside of our purview, though. Is that correct? So we're kind of working side by side, where we work within city limits and they work outside of the city limits within the county.
Sort of. I guess where there's overlap. Well, you could go deeper and find more overlap if you want to talk about how the rural area is developing and how that affects the services that the city of Gig Harbor provides, and the roads that we maintain through taxpayer dollars and that are being used by those folks out there. So you could get into those kinds of nuances too, but the overlap really exists in the urban growth areas. That's really where we have, more concern. And, when a development such as a subdivision or something like that is proposed within the urban growth area, the county is supposed to provide that to the city. There's not really any kind of solid agreement about how that's supposed to work, but that's something that that at a high level, Katrina and the county have been talking about, getting together some kind of interlocal agreement that would say how we do that, to better work together in the urban growth area. But in answer to your question, yeah, their purview is pretty much everything, it's everything outside of this gray area where the city of Gig Harbor is, and to include our urban growth areas that we have that we have significant interest in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Carl, I wanted to add on to what Chair was talking about. I think what I was sort of shocked that, I presume that because I was a new planning commissioner, that I was the only guy that didn't know about the community plan and the PAC. But it seems like we need to understand the planning universe, I'll say, as a generic thing, where there's so many interacting pieces here. And I recognize that I will learn over time what those are, but maybe in your hip pocket car, you got that secret sheet that says, here's how all the planning pieces work. Sure. And let me explain it to you guys.
How regional planning fits together from top to.
I think that's a very good point, and I second the concept that we need more insight into this.
Okay. That is something that staff can provide. And we may be even able to bring others in to talk about it too, from, potentially from Puget Sound Regional Council, for instance, or Commerce, Department of Commerce, or, from the county, to kind of support that. There's also the planning short course that the PAW does. It's been a long time since I've sat in on that, so I don't exactly know, how much detail it gets into, and it's looking probably a little more universally at Washington, whereas in Pierce County, it's a little bit different because we're part of the four county group under PSRC. So the way we do things is just a little bit different than the rest of the state. So, but I certainly will bring that up with Katrina, and we will do some brainstorming on how to bring that back to you. Okay, so finally, next steps in this process. The Pierce County Planning Commission is going to hear these amendments on February 3rd, February 2nd, and actually they heard this one last night. They're proposed to take action on all these amendments on February 10th. And then they will provide a recommendation to the Pierce County Council on February 15th. And as I understand it, the council is slated to take action sometime in March, April, I think.
Carl, we've got a meeting coming up early in February also, and I'm wondering, is it appropriate, is it good form, whatever, for maybe us to take some sort of position on some of these that maybe we feel strongly about?
So I talked to Katrina about this. So that's a great question. So there's a couple ways that you could do it. One way to do it is to provide comments as, obviously you can, at any time, you can provide comments as private citizens. And maybe carries less weight, I don't know. And then the other way to do it would be to vote on, making some recommendations that staff carry forward into the process. So yeah, there's definitely a couple of ways that you could do that. And certainly we could facilitate that. Now, let me see, where's the calendar here? So 210. Yeah. I mean, well, I guess it's up to you all to decide if that's how if you want to proceed that way and get this on at your next meeting to try and put together some to craft some comments that would go into the record. I don't know if that means maybe the Planning Commission would want to hold a special meeting in order to do such. I suppose that could be a possibility. I guess time is kind of short.
I think maybe just if we could put it on the agenda for next time, and just make a motion to just make some simple motions to say, yeah, we think this is a great idea, or no, we don't like this. And I think that would really only apply to those things that we feel strongly for. I think there may be other things we don't want to take a position on.
Michelle, when is the next Planning Commission meeting? Do you have that schedule in front of you?
That would be February 4th.
February 4th, thank you.
Yes, if they're going to meet on the 7th, I think we would have time to get our input into them.
Yeah,
And
they're going to take action. They're going to take action on the 10th.
Yeah.
So we certainly could get comments in prior to that.
Carl, do you prepare a set of written comments that you then provide directly to the Planning Commission from the city? So you'll have like some kind of statement or recommendation?
We did, yeah, we provided, and we got it out a little bit late. We've just had too many things going on, but we did get comments into the record for the Planning Commission, at least on application number 940163. which is the update to the Peninsula Community Plan. So yeah, I have written comments, and I went to the Planning Commission last night and read those comments into the record as well.
I'm wondering if we could see what those were, Carl, and we could support, endorse them, or modify, use that as a springboard for us, our meeting on the 4th as a kind of a stalking horse, if you will.
Bob, I think that's an excellent idea because that would make it relatively easy for us to proceed. We wouldn't have to do a great deal of additional work and put more burdens on the staff.
Okay. And by then, we may have some additional comments on a couple of the other amendments as well.
I think what I would add to that is that if there are any commissioners that have any strong personal feelings about this or pertinent information you think would be helpful to go into those for us to contemplate on the 4th, I would recommend you email those to Michelle, and she can distribute them to Carl and Katrina. And then, because as you're having this conversation, I'm just kind of running through in my mind what's going to be the best way to, to make this a meaningful use of time on the 4th. Well, that didn't come out right. To make it more efficient use of time on the 4th.
Greg,
So does that sound reasonable?
yeah, and Greg, that's why I think Bob's idea is really good because then we can use the staff's comments there as a springboard, and our action on it maybe just simply would be to endorse the staff's comments on a particular area or maybe all of the areas.
Mm-hmm. So then the sequence would be, if I'm understanding it correctly, then that Carl, you will send out to all of us what you already have in writing, and then we will submit any comments back to you as soon as possible before the February 4th meeting.
So I'm going to check in with Katrina and just make sure I think that makes sense. I think that works. If it does not, if there's some procedural reason why that doesn't work, I will send an email out tomorrow.
Okay.
And or maybe get on the phone with you, Chair, and discuss.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important for everyone just to remember that when you can't reply to all. So if you have any comments, you need to send them directly to Michelle, Carl, and or Katrina, and not include anybody else. No other commissioners, that is, because of the open meeting requirement.
Yeah.
I can create a folder for people to upload them to if that would be easier.
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay, I will send that link out.
Well, Greg, I'll just say this out loud. I mean, I wonder if by making our comments after Carl has given us his report, if we're putting the city in a situation where they've already commented on it once to the Planning Commission, to the Pierce County Planning Commission, and then we are coming behind those comments and saying, oh, but we have a couple other extra comments. Is that kind of the concern, Carl, you're thinking of?
No, I'm not. No, I think that's okay. And I think that I think the idea of endorsing the staff you know, supporting the staff comments in some manner is a good one. If we're talking about creating a whole another set of comments from the Planning Commission, so you know, getting into the nuts and bolts, so to speak, of the plan and providing those to excuse me, to the Planning Commission. I just have to think about for a minute whether, you know, how fruitful that would be at the point in the process that they are in.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's never too late to get a voice on record. It's never too late to provide comment. I just don't want us to spin our wheels too much, I guess, is kind of where I'm coming from. And so, you know, had we brought this to you sooner, had we realized that there might be some desire, then we might be in a better place. But you know, their planning commission is not taking action until February 10th. So seems to me. So another thing I'll do is I'll reach out to the planner that I'm working with at Pierce County.
Yeah,
And
Carol,
ask for her advice.
Carol, I prefer the former, which is the endorsement, rather than the latter. I don't want to get into a lot of detail. I think if any of us feels really strongly about something and wants to go into detail, then that could be an individual response to the Pierce County folks.
Yeah, the as long as their public comment window hasn't closed already is. So anyway, Carl can work that out. So I don't think we need to sort this out this evening. But Carl, if you can just come back to us via email with your best recommendation, then I think that's the best way for us to move forward.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's the final slide question. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And you know, if there's anything further that I can try and answer here tonight.
Carl,
I'm happy to do so.
I just wanted to comment that, you know, the information you send out, and, you know, I'd written a ton of questions, and I really appreciate in your presentation, you addressed every single thing I'd questioned. So I really appreciate, you know, I feel like we're on the same page, and your work is greatly appreciated. I just wanted to comment that way.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Grin. Appreciate that. Try and anticipate as much as possible.
Second.
Yeah. Okay.
That concludes my presentation, Chair.
All right. Thank you. That's I would just second what Shannon said. That's awesome. You know, it amazes me when I go through a 174-page document like this. It is rare for me to even find a misplaced comma or a misspelled word. So I know it takes hours and hours of work to get that kind of thing right. So as always, another fine product.
Thank you.
So given that, what then, let's talk about other business. Does any commissioners have any other business that they like to bring up?
I have a question about Kensington Gardens. If maybe Carl is on top of that issue. I've been hearing from some community members, there's some concern about what's going on there. I believe that's in the UGA. I'm not totally sure about that, Carl. Could you illuminate what's going on there and what the impact it might have on the city?
Not aware of anything at Kensington Gardens. Is that? And I'm trying to even picture where it is exactly in in space
Oh.
right now.
Oh, it's kind of just a little bit away from the Fred Meyer shopping area, the new Fred Meyer.
Yes.
I thought it would be on everybody's radar screen. Does anybody else know anything about it on the commission? Because I got a couple calls saying that they're concerned about this development, that it's not really, it's more development than they had heard about.
I'm aware of it, Bob, but I don't know a whole lot about it. What I have heard is that it was originally planned as a Heron's Key like facility. And now it seems to be, now they're calling it a luxury resort facility. And there seems to be deliberate developer reason for changing the name of it, because it apparently gives them more leeway to do what they want to do and create higher density. And but I don't know details.
Is this over off of 50th Street?
I think so, but I'm not totally certain, Carl. I probably should have had more details coming in here for this conversation, but I thought it was pretty well known.
I know that there's something over, I just can't remember if that's Kensington Gardens. I kind of feel like it might be, business name is Gracious Retirement.
Yeah, that's Gracious Luxury Retirement.
So I know that there's been some inquiries. I don't know if there was a pre-application meeting or not, but Michelle, remember there was something about this place, and they were wanting to add more apartments, and there was some discussion about what they were approved for originally, and I feel like there may have been they may not have developed it fully at the when they originally developed it, and I think that those were some of the questions that were swirling around. I certainly do not have all of the details on it.
Okay, well, I apologize for I'll defer my question until later when I have more information or it develops further. I called into the meeting they were having with the Pierce County planner, and the meeting was canceled suddenly. So I thought maybe we would have some information on that. I apologize to the rest of the group for bringing it up right now. Sorry.
There's the one on Olson Drive that everybody is upset about, that is supposed to be a senior living facility. And there's started a petition. They're stating that it's a luxury resort, and they're going to have 5 to 6 multifamily houses. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's it.
Yeah, that is out off of Olson Drive. Because I had a couple calls about it as well.
So it's not in the UGA?
I don't think so.
Doesn't sound like it.
I'm trying to find the application on the county site. Yeah, I'm not bringing it up right now, but I don't think that is in our UGA.
Okay. All right, thanks. We'll have to divert you, Bob, to being concerned citizen outside city, outside UGA.
I'm on my own. I get it.
Okay. All right. So any other business from anyone? Well, I have some good news for y'all. On, what is today, Thursday? Someday this week, I sat in on the interviews for planning commissioner to fill the vacant seat. There were 3 candidates that were interviewed, and there is a subcommittee of the city council that interviews for all of the various boards and commissions and so on. So they invited me to sit in and listen. I did not participate in the interview process, but they graciously allowed me to offer my thoughts at the end of the interview process when they were discussing the 3 candidates. And so they allowed both Katrina and I to comment and proffer our opinions about the candidates. So I'm happy to tell you that a candidate was selected. I believe that that individual is going to, I think it's required to go to the city council, who I think is having a meeting next week. And so once that endorsement happens, then we'll be able to let you know who that individual is. But I think you're going to be pleased.
The council is going to confirm that appointment on February 8th, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then the speaking of that, I think John, your term is up this year, and I'm not sure if anyone else's is or not. Michelle, do you happen to know that offhand?
I'm just looking for the roster here.
Anyway, so folks that are on the commission have the opportunity to reapply and continue to serve. So
John is the only one.
Yep.
For 2021.
Okay.
Okay, could you send me a reminder on that one when that comes open?
We certainly will.
Okay, so next meeting, what is coming up, Carl? I mean, the meeting is on the 4th, but what do you have any, what's going to be on the agenda other than what we discussed this evening?
For now, I think that will probably be all that would be on the agenda. Actually, that's not true. There could be more. So the city council's holding its annual retreat on the 27th of this month. And so I expect that there may, one of the things that we're hoping that will come out of that is the agenda.
Okay.
Work, task items, prioritized list of what we'll be working on this year, and potentially even a couple items that spill over to next year. So we have a number of items that have been budgeted that we know are, we have money for. So we have, consultant dollars essentially to bring folks in to do some of the work and help us out. And so a few of those items are definitely going forward. There's still a little contention at the city council level on a couple of them, and which is higher priority. And so that's what they're going to be. Discussing at that council retreat on 27th. So I would suspect that we will have something on your agenda relative to that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll wait. I think that 2021 for us is going to be fast and furious, folks. So buckle up.
Definitely going to get busy.
Okay. Well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Greg.
And second,
Second.
all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 6:45 p.m. Thank you all, and thanks for your commitment to being here every meeting. I think that's awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.